As New York's population ages, there is more and more attention to the importance of home care services for the state's seniors as well as New Yorkers with disabilities. And while there has been a lot of attention in recent years on the administration of the state's consumer directed care program, home care can take a lot of different forms, and operators face a variety of challenges. So we wanted to shine a light on licensed home care service agencies, including how they get licensed and their role in the continuum of care. So we're checking in with Gwen Crossett, a registered nurse who founded Constant Care 24/7, which is licensed to coordinate and perform home care with nurses and home health aides, as well as provide companion services. Welcome to the show, Gwen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So, for starters, what are the services that licensed home care service agencies can provide, and how do you see their role in the continuum of care for seniors or New Yorkers maybe with disabilities?
A licensed home care agency is called a LICSA, is very different than a certified home health agency, which is called a CHA. Those are the acronyms. A CHA is an agency that performs skilled care such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, and Medicare is reimbursing their services. It's usually done for an acute need. Licensed home care agencies are providing personal care services so someone can remain at home. So these services, if you are private pay, are not covered by Medicare. Dressing, bathing, meal preparation, transferring assistance, toileting assistance, things that are going to help you stay in your own home, but are not acute. So they would be called custodial, meaning custodial care, which means, you know, to continue staying at a what we call in the nursing world baseline. So they provide those services. And then the other service that is provided by a LICSA can be nursing services. And you have to be a nurse in order to function as a nurse through a licensed agency. So without this license, I can't employ nurses to do nursing, med pre-pours, any type of wound care, evaluations and assessments, nursing assessments. You have to work under a LICSA to be a nurse unless you are a sole proprietor and working for yourself, but you cannot employ nurses. So there's that oversight. And then we're regulated by the Department of Health.
And for a licensed home care service agency, if it's providing services to someone, what is the frequency of visits like? Can it range a wide gamut in terms of daily to less frequently?
Yes. So we have clients that are patients of ours that we may see once a month for a case management visit, once a week for an hour. We might be performing a skilled nursing visit. And then we can also have the caregiver, such as a home health aide or PCA, go in there up to 24 hours a day. So they can go in there an hour a day, all the way up to 24/7. But that care is overseen by a nurse. So it's managed by a nurse, a registered nurse. So there is oversight with those disciplines such as PCAs and home health aides.
And I believe you described the payment model as private pay. So does that mean these are services that are really only available to people if they've got long-term care insurance or the ability to pay out of pocket on an ongoing basis? Or do other types of coverage, like a state-run Medicaid plan or other types of coverage, maybe foot the bill?
Yeah, so a licensed home care agency such as Alexa is private pay or Medicaid.
Mm.
So we can accept Medicaid as Alexa, or it could be private pay. So you fall into one of those two categories when you're with a licensed home care agency.
And what is the demand for a licensed home care agency like right now in the areas that you serve? Do you find that there are more providers than, say, consumers demanding this, or is this like most things in the healthcare space where the providers can't keep up with the demand?
So I'm in central New York. I'm in Syracuse, but I do talk to other providers across the state, both Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, and also downstate, and especially in the rural areas up in the North Country. There is a huge demand for personal care. There's companion agencies in a lot of New York State because you don't have to be licensed, but they're very limited in what they can do. They're not allowed to do any hands-on. So if they're doing more than meal preparation or reminding Our buzzwords are oversight, supervision, redirection, housekeeping, meal preparation, and med reminders. That's what a companion agency does when it falls into putting our hands on dressing, bathing, toileting, showering. Those things have to be done by a licensed agency. So there is a huge need for the hands-on services because nobody in this space is getting better, right? So we're aging, we're trying to age in place. We may start out in the companion arena, and then we might have to move into more of a skilled need. And so clients are having to, if they're not going with a licensed home care agency, because they would have to switch agencies once they're out of the companion care, they exceed those retention standards. So huge need all over the place. I can, just from experience, I can tell you that, my phone rings off the hook. Other agencies are referring to us because we have the license and they don't. There's definitely a need, but I do understand the way the state is handing out licenses because they also have to oversee those licenses. And so, they can't just give them to anybody who wants to apply to them. So I get that part of it, but it's not, 11,500 people every day in this country turn 65. So this problem is going to get worse, not better.
Well, let's talk a little about that licensing, because for about 4 years until the spring of 2022, there was a de facto moratorium on the licensing of new licensed home care service agencies. And now, in order to get licensed, there is a presumption of no public need if there are 5 or more of these agencies already operating in a county. What is the effect of that hoop that agencies will need to clear in order to demonstrate that they are needed? What is the effect of that on agencies like yourself that want to be in this space? Is it presenting a difficult hurdle?
Absolutely. So the presumption of 5 or more agencies in a county. Now think about that. I live in Onondaga County. There's approximately 500,000 people that live in this county, and 5 licensed agencies are not home care agencies like myself. They can be assisted living licenses through, they have to have LICSA licenses too. So the way that they set that up is it doesn't work, because you automatically are disqualified if you have 5 or more. And there are very few counties in the state of New York that have less than 5. I tried to look into going up to Jefferson County, which is a pretty rural county. And Watertown is the biggest city up there, and there's 5 up there. So we're not even able to apply to help. And I know there's a huge need because I've talked to providers up there. I've talked to referral services up there. So I don't know how they came up with that. I don't know if they, that's a really good question, but the math doesn't math to me.
Well, then what about those agencies that are practicing in this space and the oversight by state health officials? Because scope of practice is something that is heavily regulated in New York, but when the rubber meets the road and someone is in a room with someone, it's kind of hard to police what they're actually doing. And then there's the different forms that care can take, especially if someone is not on the up and up about how they're marketing themselves and how they're trying to solicit new clients. So what are you seeing on that side of things?
Yeah, so I'm seeing the huge need, and I it's a supply and demand issue, and I get why people are starting their little mom and pop shops, as I call it. But there's a lot of different problems, but there's the need. So my mom needs to be taken care of. I don't really care, and I don't have all the information that I have. I don't understand what a LICSA is, what a companion is, what a registry is, what are all those models. I just want my mom taken care of. So I find a lot of smaller business owners may not even know what they don't know, and a lot of them are getting into this space because they see a need, they want to help people, but they don't understand all the regulations. So there's that problem. There's also, the licensing is, for me to get my license, first of all, I couldn't apply for one because we had more than 5. So I had to buy another license that was being handed back in. That was a 3-year process. 3 years it took me to get the license. And if I didn't have the legal team working for me and my consultants working for me, I don't think I would have ever gotten it done, to be honest with you, because I'm working on my day to day business and I'm trying to take care of people and I'm trying to be a registered nurse and I'm trying to run a business. There's no way without the resources and the means that I could have gotten that done. So there's that barrier. What frustrates me is, I had to go through all this painstaking process and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be honest with you. And then I turn around and there are people doing the same thing I'm doing without a license. So, but I get it. I get it at the same time. People need care and families don't care. They really just don't care. They just want help for their loved one. So and then there's not enough surveyors either. There are not enough people that are out there policing this stuff. But now I'm on the radar. I'm being policed because I have a license, but Joe Schmo down the street who doesn't have a license, they're not going to be policed, especially if they stay under the radar.
Well, what do you think is the right balance moving forward? Because clearly we want to have rules and regulations, but we don't want them to be too burdensome, and we want to be responsive to the needs of people. So what makes sense moving forward? Is there an easy answer, or is this going to take, everybody rolling up their sleeves and cooking up ideas around the table?
So I think the state of New York needs to ask the actual providers out there, and I think they need to have a panel of companion agencies and licensed agencies and healthcare professionals that work in this business every day, care managers, and asking them what they need. And also, I think we all need to look at other states and how they're regulated. We are one of the most highly regulated state in the all 50 states. So I think we can, for instance, if someone needs toileting help, right? They have dementia and they can't get on and off a toilet and perform the hygiene that is necessary to successfully use the toilet. You can't be in a companion care model, So I think that the models need to change a little bit so that there's more opportunity for businesses to do some hands-on care. And I think there needs to be a line that's drawn in the sand. And I think that these agencies, companion care agencies that possibly could toilet and get people's shoes and socks on,
Sure,
need to have maybe a registered nurse or somebody overseeing care. But the process, I think, needs to be a little bit easier. And I have spoken to other people doing business in other states. And this is it's just one of the toughest to get care. And so what's happening is, because it's so difficult to be a business and be governed by the Department of Health, it forces people to go underground and do business illegally. So there's actually our regulations are actually forcing the underground world to happen, in my opinion. So I think we need to come up with not necessarily politicians sitting around the room and making these rules, but having a panel of providers figuring this out. And when you read the regulations and how to, I'll give you an example about how to, there's 5 LICs in the county. Who came up with that? Like where did that come from? And how did that decision get arrived? It makes no sense to me as a nurse, a provider, and a business owner. So, that's one of my ideas, I guess, to make things a little bit easier for people to do business.
Well, finally, what about the consumer side of things? What advice would you have for a senior or maybe someone whose parents are aging and they're looking for not necessarily that acute care, but that more basic home care assistance so they can stay in their home? What advice would you have for them as they're looking for the right provider for them, or how to prepare for that type of decision?
Yeah. So I do believe in doing business legally in a safe legal manner with liability insurance and workers' comp and disability and all of the things that we have to protect us as business owners and plus to protect the caregiver. So I would say to families, try to not hire Janie down the street or a friend of a friend, because it's all good until it's not, right? It's all good until she slips and falls and can't work anymore because she hit her head. Now she has a head injury from your sidewalk. And now you're getting sued or you're getting stolen from because you didn't really vet that person. So I would say try to find help through a legal entity that is a business and that is registered and is practicing within their scope, such as a licensed home care agency or a companion agency, or reach out to a care management organization because they can help hook you up with the right resources that are, care management organizations are big here in New York State and all over the country. And they are bound by certain ethics that they should be referring you to people that are licensed, insured, and doing business above board. So I would recommend that people, try to go with and really doing a little bit of vetting themselves. Like, how do you vet your caregivers? What are your regulations? What can and can't you do? In asking those questions. And if you don't know how to ask those questions, we have this lovely thing called AI now, which can give us really great information and do a little bit of research prior to having your loved one helped. So.
Well, we've been speaking with Gwen Crossett. She's a registered nurse who founded Constant Care 24/7. Gwen, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for listening to today's edition of the Capitol Press Room. For an insider take on what's happening in state government, check out our Dispatches from Planet Albany show, available wherever you get podcasts or at capitolpressroom.org.
Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.